Dana is all about soul. Cities have a soul, they have a heartbeat, and it's made up of the people and the energy between people and around people.
She has the knack to be able to see things, see what's possible that other people frankly don't see.
She's always felt like she had to get in there into the fray and make a difference.
And so I do think she saved the soul before it was completely destroyed.
She was born curious. She's a risk taker.
She's a pioneer. She's an individualist.
She can get people to see her point of view. She buys people into her vision, and then she's just relentless.
As strong and enduring as the Rocky Mountains they stood beside, as visionary as the views of the Grand Plains they looked across, the women inducted into the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame are trailblazers whose work has improved and enriched our lives. They are teachers, scientists, ranchers, leaders in business, education, religion, and the arts. Women who have been recognized for their many contributions to our state, our country, and the world. I'm Renelda Muse, and these are the stories of great Colorado women.
Dana, we all know that you're noted for preservation. So tell me a little bit about how you got started in this field.
Well, I grew up in Salina, Kansas, in an American family, and it was a family that had been very, very involved with the evolution of this nation. We had a big family home in Ohio, where my mother and I went to visit every summer. The family had gone there right after the Revolutionary War because everybody that fought in the war lost all their money. And so the government gave them grants on land, and so they received a grant on the Ohio River and ultimately built a very, very large historic home there where nobody ever threw anything out. For a kid adventuring around in an isolated area with no pals, I got pretty steeped in all that stuff. I ended up in graduate school in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It was a part of the Harvard Business School, but they wouldn't let women go to the business school, their excuse being the men use such bad language. When I was in graduate school, I worked at the Museum of Science in Boston. There was a great gal there that was in the public relations department, and she was very generous about teaching me because I was in graduate school and I didn't really know what I would be able to do to make a living. And that seemed to be quite important to my parents and to me. So she helped me learn the PR field, which has been very, very helpful all through the years. And I started working at the Denver Art Museum, and the wife of the director there, Seal Bach, was very, very involved with all the special events and all of the promotion of the Denver Art Museum, and it was home to me.
I think Colorado shaped Dana because we have always had a pioneering spirit, and Dana embodies that pioneering spirit for Larimer Square and for Union Station and Lodo. Her vision kind of matched the spirit of Colorado.
I think that Denver, being a city that really had such a rich history around railroads and gold mining and oil and agriculture, she really got inspired by that history.
I got obsessed about the idea of having a place for people in Denver to understand where the community had come from, and also for a place where we could be stylish and have fun and get everybody involved with it. Diversity wasn't such a big subject at that time, but it was a really big subject with me.
Her involvement in real estate really came sort of indirectly out of her desire to create a place, figuring out a way to take a space that maybe was, an old factory or an old machine shop and turning it into something that can be used today. So if the space, for example, was a typewriter repair shop, well, we don't need typewriter repair shops anymore, but maybe we need a place for an artist to do creative work, or a restaurant or a wine bar or a great retail store. That's the part that's hard, I think, about historic preservation today, is that you want to preserve the essential character of the building, but find a way to make it relevant and useful today.
I don't think she looks at something and says, oh, I can make money here, or this ought to be saved because of this, she will look at it and say, that's pretty special. That's really a reflection of our times or our place, and people ought to enjoy this in a different way.
Many, many people, especially in this business, are driven by what's the bottom line in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever the time frame might be. It's not that she ignores the bottom line, but it is surely not what drives her.
I imagine in the early years, she didn't know what she was doing. She knew what she wanted to do, and she didn't have the money, so she had to raise the money. And those are the challenges in the real estate business then, and they're the challenges today. But she certainly had a big mountain to climb when she started this business.
She is not afraid of a challenge. She's not afraid of taking the risk, and for the most part, she's been rewarded. But so have we, because the work that she has done has not just benefited Dana. In fact, sometimes I'm not even always sure that they've all been financially successful initially, although they've turned out to be that way in the end.
For her, success was not necessarily how much she made on a deal, but whether she was able to tell the story and preserve the building.
For Dana, she looked at any project in the context of the entire urban fabric, and how does that project fit in and make the rest of its surroundings better?
It's really all about using the historic buildings to tell stories and give people experiences.
Her urban solutions were solutions that fit into the surrounding environment, that made the surrounding environment better, and in turn made her project better.
The idea was to create an experience for the people who came to Denver so that they would sort of have a sense of where the city had been and where it is at any point in time and what the future is.
So many people who were interested in old buildings watched the wholesale destruction of 22 blocks of our downtown area, and I think the reaction was, we got to do something, to not let this happen ever again.
Dana was among the few in the country that had realized that older buildings had a lot of value, and she was doing this in the midst of urban renewal that was in fact had the opposite view and was tearing everything down.
I looked for an area where we could do a gathering place for people. And finally, I found the 1400 block of Larimer, and I started doing research on it.
Businesses were moving out. Half of downtown was empty. It was a place people were afraid to go. They said, avoid Larimer Street. It's Skid Row. It's dangerous.
The architecture intrigued her, and she did research on it and found out that this is really where the city started. I think that rich history is what got her excited and said this place is worth saving.
Her story at Larimer Square was the people she had to convince and the challenges she had to overcome, and her own personal stake in that project, not just her reputation but her own family treasure, and seeing it through just, I think, demonstrates her ability to stay the course, to stay focused and to do whatever it takes to get the job done.
What a lot of people may not remember about Dana's tenure of ownership of Larimer Square is that she owned and operated many of the businesses that were there. And she did that because that was the only way she could really get the kind of tenants for the project that she wanted. A couple of them that come to mind are Victoriana, the antique jewelry store. She started that.
And she met the guy from the Tiny Jewel Box in Georgetown and paid him his hourly rate to help her, learn all she could about the antique jewelry business.
To go back to those original tenants in Larimer Square, they were so important. We couldn't have made it without them. And running a small business is a huge responsibility. Particularly, we had so many rules because that discipline was so important for the future of that particular block.
There's a balance between having a vision and being enthusiastic about something and having the discipline to do it the right way, both economically and within the boundaries of, the property or the site or whatever it is you're doing.
Oftentimes, we're proposing an idea that a lot of people, have a different idea. And she's relentless. She stays at the table. She comes with her facts. She's willing to take the risk. And she's very capable of convincing people to see her point of view.
She was a pioneer, and it's hard to make money and to be monetarily successful, and I'm not saying she wasn't monetarily successful, but it's hard to be monetarily successful when you're on the leading edge.
It's hard to find investors, and particularly hard to find investors way back when who would invest in what my children called dirty old buildings.
And it was in the 1970s when Dana and some of her colleagues from around the country came up with this idea that preservation could be for profit. The notion that you could invest in an old building and actually get a return on that investment was just unheard of. And at a time when all of the financial institutions in the country were only really writing loans for new construction, there was no such thing as a rehabilitation loan. I think she was at some point able to get some bank loans, but she had to put an awful lot down on the table to really secure those loans.
I think the early years were tough and were largely endured by Dana.
In Larimer Square, it was funny because the stereotype of the landlord and the tenant was very much in focus, and we had to have people pay rent. And so I had to go out often and collect the rent at a time when the tenants didn't want to pay. And so I dubbed myself the Dragon Lady. The Dragon Lady was a character that was in a comic strip. She was very shapely and always had very long fingernails, and she was ornery.
So you knocked on the door and said the Dragon Lady was here, right?
Well, sometimes, but I mean, you might as well face what's going on, and I thought, I'm not going to be winning any popularity contests here. But then after we sold Larimer Square, they all came around and said, oh, we miss you, we miss you.
As you look around the square, the character of each of those buildings is individual and unique and interesting, and that the idea of just tearing it down, that something would have been lost, the soul, the heart and soul of our city, and it's irreplaceable. And I think it was the first big project that Dana really saved. And I think as people look around Denver, those of us who have been here for a long time, it's hard to imagine our city and our downtown without Larimer Square.
The thing about it is that, if you get something accomplished and it's successful, and then they begin to change their minds, and then other people want to emulate those ideas. And then in the case of Denver, it's just a wonderful story that proves the points that the people in the preservation field always want to make, is that it can be very, very successful, and it can add enormously to the character of a community and can attract people to come here because travelers are looking for experiences. And it's really all about using the historic buildings to tell stories and give people experiences. For example, we saved the Oxford Hotel.
The Oxford Hotel is definitely one of, I think, Dana's biggest contributions to the city.
As we got involved with the Oxford, it had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 1986, and then for a second time in 1989. She affectionately called it Chapter 22. But again, came through that. But being in Lodo and redeveloping the Oxford Hotel, which was really a flop house, into what it became as the Oxford, is what we really know it today. And I think that as people come to visit our community, they're interested in that, and it adds to the interest of our city, the vibrancy of our city, and it's what attracts people and keeps people coming.
And I guess at the time I didn't dream that ultimately Lower Downtown would be an extension of Larimer Square. But when I had the opportunity to work on the Oxford Hotel, and it was so close to Union Station, and also such an important part of the history and the whole evolution of a great community, I guess I began to get the picture.
She does have unbelievable vision for how to adaptively reuse great historic buildings.
You know, it's funny, she's involved with some projects right now that many people would say, you know, she's crazy to some of the ideas that she has, but she's always been called crazy. You know, when she started Larimer Square, she was crazy. When she decided she was going to open a hotel in lower downtown when it was still sort of considered sort of a risky and dangerous place to be. She's not just an urban pioneer, she's like an urban guerrilla. She goes in before anybody goes in, and she's out there trailblazing and making it possible for others to follow.
Many people thought the flour mill loss was the craziest idea yet, this abandoned building in the middle of the railroad tracks in a wretched area of town. That would never catch on.
She's discussing this new project that she's going to do down there, and my head is just saying, man, what has she been smoking? Because this is so, I can't imagine anybody would live here. I can't imagine anybody would be here.
I told her not to do it. I told her she was crazy.
And it took a while, but of course Flour Mill is now a landmark in Lodo in its transformation.
And so many places in the city wouldn't be here were it not for Dana or Dana's vision or Dana's support.
Downtown Denver is a vibrant, active place as a result of her vision. Dana always said the only way to activate downtown is to put lights on after 5, and she innovated residential, she innovated hotels. She was very focused on trying to get lights on after 5 o'clock to make Denver a rounded 24-hour city.
The way that she assembles a team of believers around her to get these projects done. Union Station is a wonderful example of that. And everybody brought something to the table that was needed to get this really ambitious project done. But at the heart of it was really Dana.
The demographic center of the metro area, not just the city and county of Denver, has been around Union Station for most of its history. That project really recentered that as the center point of our community, I think.
Obviously, where we are today at the Denver Union Station, which was a building that was threatened with demolition, had an uncertain future. Everybody really was interested in, well, not everybody, because the people who wanted to tear it down weren't so interested in keeping it here. It was considered to be something of an albatross. But we put a group of people together, the Union Station Alliance, to come in here and work on the building and turn it into what it is today, which is a big award winner on an international basis.
There's a great story about how the Crawford Hotel got its name. We have a small group of people that get together, and we had lots and lots of names that were being thrown out. And one of the partners said, you know, we should call it the Crawford. We should name it after Dana. So I was assigned to go have that conversation with her, and she flatly told me, absolutely not, there's no way we're going to call that hotel the Crawford. I won't allow it.
My partners wanted to name this place the Crawford, and I said, oh, no way. My mother brought me up, you know, that you're in the newspaper 3 times, born, married, died. So I just said no. And then my kids, my sons and their wives and their daughters and one grandson came here when we were under construction, and we walked out into the middle of the Great Hall, and I said, I think I should tell you that my partners are wanting to name the hotel Crawford. And my grandson said, oh, I think that would be very pretentious. And I said, that's the perfect word. And all the Crawford boys agreed. And all the girls said, let's do it. And so now I have all these great granddaughters and daughters-in-law and everything. And I thought, well, hell, if they want to do it, well, why not, you know? So, and it's worked out. I still call this the Denver Union Station Hotel, but, you know, I'll get so I can call it the Crawford.
Her name being on there is symbolic in many ways, that there's a person who came here from out of state, made it on her own, a pioneer in the real estate business, a pioneer in historic preservation, and she gets her name on that building. I just think it's pretty cool.
What happens is that these places become so important to the community. They're a part of our identity. Anytime that there's a major sporting event or a major event in Denver, there are always two properties that you can count on being on national television during one of those events. And one of them is Larimer Square, and the other is Denver Union Station. So they really are, they're iconic, and they're part of our identity.
She saw that. She had that vision, and then she had the tenacity, the wherewithal, the ability to get up every day, step over those obstacles that were put in front of her to get the deal done.
She raised 4 boys in diapers through toddlers while she was developing Larimer Square. So she was a mom, she was a businesswoman, she was a social activist.
People have made a big emphasis about my gender, and I always say, I'm just a person. I don't really like the idea of gender stereotypes. So in that regard, I think that my absence during the period of time when people were marching up and down and burning bras and stuff like that, I wasn't there. I was on Larimer Street digging in the alley,
She has national celebrity in many ways.
I know when the National Trust for Historic Preservation, which has an annual meeting somewhere in the United States, is putting on any kind of a seminar or a program about adaptive reusing commercial buildings, Dana's on it. She's just been a sought-after resource for how do you do this economically and successfully.
I think that people say that I've been kind of obsessed, and I think it's okay to be obsessed.
Every day she is looking at a new project. She has something to look forward to. She doesn't look back. Many of us try and look back for her, say, what did she accomplish? You rarely get into that conversation with her. She doesn't want to talk about what she did. She wants to talk about something that she's thinking about, something that's going to happen, or how about doing this, or how about doing that.
I think that people sometimes don't understand how warm she is and how engaging she is and supportive she is. And she's always wanting to meet new people and surround herself with fun and exciting people. She's never stopped looking for new friends and new allies and new partners.
I think the best thing to know about Dana is that when you sit down and you have a conversation with Dana, you're probably not talking about other people, and you're probably not talking about events. With Dana, you're talking about ideas, and that's why I so much enjoy and look forward to spending time with her.
I think she's a lovely person to work with, and I think her warmth and her just good character is not nearly celebrated as much as it should be.
It's not over for Dana. Her greatest legacy may be one that she hasn't totally created, or she's created it and we yet don't fully understand it.
Just recently, we purchased the Argo Mill and Mine in Idaho Springs, and we'll continue with its development, but probably have a big restaurant, a destination restaurant and hotel.
Idaho Springs, which is, essentially a suburb of Denver, but you got to go up into the hills, that she's taking on, one of the biggest challenges of a mountain town ever.
And then I'm also working in Trinidad, Colorado, in the southern part of the state, which is a stunning small town that needs to have somebody help it kind of get up on its feet again.
She's as active today as I've ever known her. In fact, I think she may have more projects, more things going on today than at any time that I've known her in the last 20-some years.
Can she keep going for another 20 years? I am just absolutely amazed at her stamina and her ability to keep doing new and innovative things.
Without Dana, we wouldn't have Larimer Square, we wouldn't have the Oxford Hotel, we wouldn't have Lodo, we wouldn't have Union Station, we wouldn't have the Flour Mill Loss. So here's a case where one woman makes a huge difference.
And I think that our city, our community, really owes her a debt of gratitude, because Denver just wouldn't be the same without Dana Crawford.